The Toronto Sceptres win 3-1 against the Ottawa Charge on Stick It to Cancer Night in Toronto. And much like the last game Toronto played against the Fleet, this was an absolute dominant performance in their home barn in Toronto. Couple of notes about this game. Darryl Watts was back in the lineup on that top line with Malte centering and Spooner on the right wing. Messier was moved down to being the 13th forward, and DeGeorge was scratched. Also, starting tonight, between the pipes for Toronto was Elaine Chuli, letting Kirk rest, presumably so she can be ready to start against Montreal on Sunday. Or, maybe Troy Ryan is just trying out the tandem thing. I know Troy generally likes to have the designated starter backup role, but a tandem wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Nice to let your goalies rest, and if you have two good ones, at least why not, right? But from the drop of the puck, it was, pretty even. Ottawa might have had a slight edge very early into the game, and on their first or second shot, that was pretty evident as Vanuza Kadyrova managed to get Chuli moving a little bit and just slide it in her 5-hole. Definitely one I think Chuli would like back. But from a little under 2 minutes into the game, Toronto's already down 1-0, and it is not looking all that good. But they use this to light a fire under their own butts, and they really turned it up for the rest of the period, eventually managing to change the shots from, 2 zilch, as it was when they were scored 2 minutes in, to 18-4 in the first period. They didn't even let their opponents get 18 shots last game over the course of 3. So to get 18 in the first period, that's pretty... It's just dominant. And last game and the last reaction, I talked, they were overcomplicating a bit, just making one too many passes or taking a second too long in a lot of their plays. They seem to have cleaned that up this game. Their play felt a little bit tighter and more concise. There were definitely a few times where they took a bit longer on a play than they needed to, or might have made the pass they didn't need to. Their passes also... They could be cleaner. I think there were definitely a couple of times where they weren't the most well handled or received or given. It was just a bit of a messy passing, but it wasn't on every play, was the point. And it was decidedly a minority of the plays that were made that were a bit, on the lower quality side, so I can live with that. It's clear, obvious visual improvement from us, the fans, and from them down the ice. I have to hope they are seeing the same thing. But one thing about this game too, and we know that Toronto's power play hasn't really been all that great so far this season. Ottawa seems to want to give them a bit of practice time on it. I think they decided, these guys need to work on their power play, so let's give them a few tries, because Ottawa gave up 6 penalties this game. 3 of which came in the first period. Unfortunately, even though Toronto had 6 minutes of power play time in the first period, they didn't manage to capitalize on any of them. Though they did actually have a couple shots, and they all looked like good, solid power plays. The problems we've been having is that they can't get possession, or fight for possession, or can't enter the zone when they have a power play. And while that did happen a time or two later in the game, it didn't start that way. They definitely started off with a decent, solid power play, which I think really helped them build up momentum, really helped them sustain their pressure. But they still go into the second period down 1-0. But around the same amount of time it took Ottawa to score in the first period, it only takes about 30 seconds longer for Toronto to score in the second, because of yet another power play from former Sceptre Jocelyn The Rock. Takes a hooking penalty, or a tripping penalty, my apologies, early in the second period that, sees Toronto get the woman advantage once again, and it is none other than Daryl Watts coming back. Her first home game of the season, second game of the season, after some nifty passes up high on the perimeter. She works her way in a little bit and just snipes one over the blocker, Gwyneth Phillips, and that evens up the game nice and tidy. And you love to see it. You love to see the power play finally working, finally clicking. You love to see Watts getting a goal always. And especially since Gwyneth Phillips really robbed a couple of chances, especially late in that first period. There was one where I believe it was Blair Turnbull, took a whack at a loose puck at the crease, and Phillips is like on her stomach and turned around a little bit, and she reaches back with the paddle of her stick and keeps the puck out. Everyone thought that was going in for sure. How could it not? And then Phillips is crazy. Like, America's goalies are absolutely nuts. They have Phillips and Frankel going into the Olympics? What are you talking about? That's insane. That's not fair. That shouldn't be allowed. That's illegal. Okay, a Frankel and Phillips. But anyway, Gwen Phillips, I mean, she's an absolute stud of a goalie, and as a Sceptres fan who wants us to score on her, it was annoying to watch. As a hockey fan who loves seeing good plays, oh my gosh, she was amazing this game. I've been noticing this trend, at least in the Sceptres games. I don't know, I haven't paid close enough attention to the whole league to determine if this is a consistency or not, but definitely in the Sceptres games, the second period is by far the lowest event period of any game they play. The Sceptres themselves don't necessarily get a lot of chances, a lot of shots, a lot of looks in the second period, but they don't really let their opponents have one either. I don't know if that's Troy Ryan making like that defense first coaching decision when you have the long change in the second with the benches on the opposite sides of your zone, or what it is. But like, I mean, it's good. At least they're shutting the other team down. But like, they went from having 18 shots in the first to having 9 in the second. Ottawa went from having 4 shots in the first to 7 in the second. So, it balances out a little bit more, but even still, that's much lower event overall. I say the second has been one of their less good periods. She did get a goal. They got 2 goals in the second period. Really, really nice play from Malte, passes it over to Watts, and Watts just feeds it out front of the net. Spooner is right there to tap it in past Phillips. Easy peasy, bing bang boom. 2-1 lead for Toronto. It was beautiful, it was wonderful. After Spooner was out for half of last season, and the half she was in, she didn't look quite like herself because she was obviously still not 100%. She was good enough to be back, but she wasn't the Natalie Spooner we all know and love. So to see her getting a goal, nice, bright and early in the season in Game 3, it's wonderful to see. I love it. She made a couple of strange passing decisions, though, this game. At least 2 instances I can think of, there might have been more, where she's, down the corner, digging along the boards, fighting for a puck battle, and she wins the puck battle, but then sort of just passes it to no one. Like, it seemed to be going to one of her defenders up to the point along the blue line, but it was both times that I can explicitly think of, it was never really close to anybody. It was just over there somewhere. And I don't know if that's her just trying to get rid of it quickly after winning the puck battle so they don't, get right back on her and pin it to the boards again, or what it was. It seemed, though, like borderline panicky. It was just a very get rid of this type of play, which doesn't seem like Nat Spooner very much at all. Aside from some of those small things, she had a great game. I think, Watts had a great game. First game home. Jalmerson was in the lineup. I think she did great. I think that third line kind of, or fourth line maybe, of rookies of Gentry and Zanin, and I think Woods is on that line to mentor them a little bit. Looked great. Gentry was mixing it up again. Love to see that. Love to see a bit of that grit. Yeah, the second comes and goes. The third period comes along. Toronto once again, now that they're out of that kind of second period quote-unquote slump, even though they scored twice, it was just the pressure wasn't there as much. You know what I'm saying, right? Like, they scored, obviously that's good. They did have offense, but compared to the first and compared to the third, way less pressure and offense in the second period. But they returned to that form in the third. Keep pouring it on. I think Ottawa's they're really pushing because now they're down by one instead of being up by one. And as, the period goes on, I think they definitely start to push over Toronto a little bit. They get a bit more offensive zone time, especially late in that period to get down to, 7-6, 5 minutes left. They're starting to put on a little bit of pressure. Chuli's making some good saves. Eventually they pull Phillips, and Toronto sends it down once. It goes off a stick, so it doesn't count as icing. Ottawa works it back into their zone, and then Turnbull steals away the puck, and she does not miss. And the captain of the Toronto Sceptres gets her second goal in as many games, and you just love to see it. You just love to see it. It was great. It's the security goal with about 30 seconds left in the game or so. That's where the game would end. Ottawa did call a timeout after that and was clearly trying to set up a play, and it did almost work, to be fair. I could kind of see, after they dropped the puck, the play they were trying to make, but with 40 seconds left down by 2, it was just a bit of a hard sell, I think. But Toronto, again, overall, just like that Boston game, they looked great. They played awesome. There's obviously a few tweaks that could, again, just tighten up the passing a little bit. But they managed to, they found those instances where, as Troy Ryan said in the post-game against Boston, just taking a lot of B chances and not upgrading them to A-grade chances. And this game, it felt like they had gotten a lot of A-grade chances. They had 37 shots by the end of the game. Ottawa had 17. Yeah, sure, Phillips was the losing goalie. She stopped 34 shots. That's, Chuli stopped 16. That's, again, more than double. They just poured it on. And this is a game Ottawa definitely wanted to win. Their first game back from Coach Carla McLeod because she missed last game against Minnesota, and the fact that they got slapped around a little bit. Their last game at home against Minnesota, they lost 5-1. It did not go how they wanted it to go. So to see them come out clearly with a lot of pressure and have Toronto just snuff it out completely and say, no, this is our barn. We're running the show and you can stand back and watch, especially after Ottawa got that early lead. It was really nice to see the resilience from Toronto and the ability to sustain the pressure. They didn't have one good period and then shut it off. It was a great game. Toronto took advantage of Ottawa's mistakes. They took advantage of their penalties to keep their momentum going in their favor. The other thing, Jocelyn Larocque took 3 of Ottawa's 6 penalties. So not only is that one of your assistant captains, that's a big penalty killer for them. One of your top line defenders in the box, that is not who you want in there, right? So, Toronto was really given those gifts by Ottawa this game, and it just really showed the pressure they're able to put on, and I really hope they can continue this trend. Sunday against Montreal, in Montreal, I think it's going to be their first game back on the road for 2 games, and I don't want to see it fall off because their first road game against Minnesota, yes, was the first game of the season, and I'm hoping that was more the case, but that road game didn't look all that great, even though they won. But considering how they've played the last couple of games, just bulldozing their opponent, this is not a trend I want to see stop. I want to keep seeing it. Like everything's working, everything's right. I'm loving everything that I'm seeing, aside from those few messy passes that could be cleaned up. But like, oh boy, the Sceptres have really. They're not leaning on one odd thing. They're not leaning on an 11 game or 9 game win streak this year like they did in the first season. They're not leaning on a 50% power play like they did in the second season to jump up higher in the standings. The team is just damn good. And I'm loving it. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you enjoyed it. Click subscribe if you want to see more. They are steamrollers.